Well, I'm going to make my announcement here. Jennifer Evans, welcome back to the show here, the popular growing show of Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. And a special guest, along with Jennifer today, is Lara Smith. Hi, Laura. Welcome to the show of Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies.
Hi, thank you, and thanks to Jen for including me in this. I'm excited to be part of it.
There's always lots of different topics that we cover on a weekly basis on the show, and today we're going to be talking about we're going to start with ODSP and kind of what's going on there, and then we're going to be talking regarding the controversial topic of MAID. We'll start actually first with the ODSP and the developments of what's happening in the community. Like, what is the latest on the ODSP on the election?
Obviously, we're just about a month away from the election right now. June 2nd is the date that we will be going to the polling stations. But obviously, as we've been getting closer to the election, the party platforms have started coming out. And we're in a pretty interesting position right now, and that we're still waiting for one. One has come out with some pretty disappointing content, and one has come out with literally nothing for people with disabilities. So let's start at the top. I don't think anybody will be too surprised to hear that in the budget this year and in the CPC platform, there is zero increase for ODSP, OW, or any other benefits programs whatsoever. If anybody's shocked by that, then I have some beautiful real estate in Florida that you might be interested in. The reality is that is unlikely to change. If any of you are familiar with what the CPCs actually have planned, they've engaged a firm called Maximus that has been very active in benefit management and in social service management in the United States for a number of years. I think they're based in California. And if any of you have seen, there's a very difficult to watch documentary on Netflix about a boy in the Los Angeles area who was brutally abused, and Maximus was the company that was really responsible for his monitoring and his well-being, and did not do a great job. I don't actually have the name of the documentary, but if you go and look on Netflix, I'll post it after. And it's very insightful into how Maximus actually works in their practices. So we know that they're planning to outsource much of the management of these programs to Maximus, and that they're really in the testing of that right now. So if that happens, things are not going to get better. The likelihood is that the service level, which is terrible already, and I know people trying to reach their caseworkers are sometimes completely unable to do it for weeks or months at a time. That's not anticipated to improve under the Conservatives and with Maximus running the program. Obviously, the NDP is the most progressive party. The Greens are kind of in a little nether world in some ways because they're very focused on a specific issue. They do have the best policies at the moment for ODSP. They actually do have a policy of their platform includes a doubling of the rates. The NDP, however, has come out with a 20% increase and some pretty problematic comments from the party leader about how people who are earning $200,000, and that's personal income, are struggling to find housing. I still, frankly, cannot believe that came out of her mouth, but it did. So there's a sense of betrayal, I think, among people both within the party and people who are struggling to make ends meet on ODSP. A 20% increase still puts everyone well below the poverty line. It's really not very meaningful. We know that in order for people to survive, they need to be at least $2,200 a month. That's basically the poverty line in Canada with the inflation rate where it is right now. So that is what we've seen from the NDP. The Liberal platform is not out yet. And we do have inroads in each of the parties. We have relationships and contacts and people that we are speaking to who have information about what is happening. And there's a lack of clarity on what's going to be happening with the Liberal platform. So it's still a bit of a mystery. It would be very unusual for the Liberals to come out with a policy around ODSP that is more progressive than the NDP. But at this stage of the election, who knows? Anything could happen. So we're still in a waiting pattern there. But what that means at this point in time is that we are not seeing in any of the party platforms an increase to the benefits level that is substantial enough to make a difference in people's lives over the next 4 years. And I know that's a very difficult reality to face. There still is one other kind of wild card that may come to pass. Talk about that a little bit later. That's the federal disability benefit. But with all of the discussion and controversy around MAID over the past little while, this is obviously something that people are very concerned about. And 4 years without any sort of increase is just absolutely not going to be sustainable. I don't need to tell any of you who are on ODSP that you're obviously already staring at that. I'm sure all of you are aware, Brenda Potter and I run a mutual aid fundraising effort on a daily basis. And we speak to a lot of people, like every day, who are really struggling to make ends meet, to do whatever they can to get to the next check day. And it's really bad and it's really hard, especially with the inflation. Inflation is hitting people really hard. We've seen 3 stories that have come out in the past 2 weeks where people who have chosen MAID have been explicit about the fact that they have chosen MAID for housing reasons. So, there's a housing thread, as I said recently on Twitter, that runs through so much of this. But in the end, it comes down to affordability and your income level. And people on ODSP simply don't make enough to, basically you have to pick between shelter and sustenance, which is a ridiculous position for anyone to be in Canada in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, nobody should be living well below the poverty line in Canada at all. I mean, we live in a very rich country, and it's ridiculous. I totally agree. I just want to throw my little snippet in there, and it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, the federal government knows the answers. They've studied this stuff 40, 50 years ago, and some cases even 60, some people say. So they have a whole manual. They already know everything, and it's just the pressure. Obviously, the pressure has to get put on that. While you were mentioning about the Maximus, Jennifer, I was just saying to Sonia, I recall vaguely, and I'm going to have to read up on it, kind of on that, because I know in British Columbia, I thought I heard through the grapevine, our opposition party, I'm going to have to do some digging up in their legislature on that, because I think I heard the word Maximus, and I'm hoping I'm wrong on that, but if I'm right, I'm going to be doing some digging on that, because that really upsets me, because I see what's going on in Ontario with Ford trying to contract that out, and that's despicable, right? He should be ashamed upon himself.
Well, exactly. And so we have an initiative going now where people who are allies, people with disabilities, are obviously very welcome to participate as well. We understand the challenges that you have just in day-to-day management of your life, given what ODSP is expecting you to live on, and just how much pressure that puts on you to, try to just manage your day-to-day existence. So there's a group of about 15 of us now who are getting on a call on Friday. Anybody who's in this conversation is welcome to join. We're going to be putting together a strategy on how we start to apply pressure to each of the political parties to get them to commit to changing their platforms to state that they will support doubling the disability benefit. And we want that to happen, obviously, before the election occurs. So that is going to consist of a pretty wide social media campaign, direct outreach efforts to MPs, MPPs, and anyone else who is involved in this decision, candidates as well. And that's going to be a blitz over the next 4 weeks. We have some early traction in some areas and other areas where we have very little. But we are looking for volunteers and people to help support this effort. So if you are interested, please reach out to Lara. She has the information on the call, agenda, Zoom information, etc., and she would be happy to share it with you. We would love to have you participate. The more the merrier. The Ford platform is about highways, and they are planning to spend a fortune on a highway that very few people want, that really is going to be incredibly disruptive to the entire town of Toronto if it moves ahead. The impact on people with disabilities in particular will be very difficult because housing is going to get even worse during that crunch period while they're ripping up the streets. And that is essentially the entirety of what they're running on is this rebuilding of Ontario. So whatever you can do to speak to people in terms of fiscal responsibility and what really needs to happen. I don't need to tell any of you what needs to be done with ODSP and OW, but if you can find a resonant point with people and really highlight what the decisions are that this government is making, and that they're spending way more than the Wynne government ever spent, which was also a primary point of criticism. I'm not quite as, I know what the polls say, and I'm not quite as pessimistic about what's going to happen, just because anyone in this province who has a child in school or is a teacher, anyone who has been through the healthcare system, been through COVID, does not have a lot of love for the Ford government right now. The problem is that so many of the elections are happening in rural areas, and in those areas, the Conservatives do tend to have a lot of power. So if there's anything that you can do to make change happen, if you can rally people, if you know people in certain areas, and there's somebody who could, potentially drive an upset or make a point of a major issue, those are some other things that you can do right now.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that can raise their hand for any questions for Jennifer?
I don't know how to raise my hand in this yet, but
we know you've got a question, so go ahead.
Okay. So it's a question. It's a comment and a question. I hear a lot of talk about strategic voting. I've been hearing it for 40 years. Mm-hmm. It's never worked, and if we keep choosing to try to find the lesser evil, we keep getting bad government. We keep getting
the evil, right?
Exactly. So I think it would be better to look for who is the best. There are three progressive parties. One of them has not talked about ODSP at all, and they were 15 years. They could have fixed the problem. They didn't. One party is saying 20% is enough, and we'll think about trying to figure out how to do more later on. All right. So then there's the Green Party, which is really actively. They've been talking about ODSP doubling this is the second election now. They've been continually doing it through the thing. They're committing to affordable housing with universal design, so it's not only just affordable but it's accessible. It's talking about enshrining the Convention of the Rights for People with Disabilities. So we need to look at who is going to best serve us and really focus on helping them win, rather than looking at who's the best, who might win against the Conservatives. So you're voting against something instead of for something.
Agreed.
Every time we do that, we lose.
Agreed. The problem with the Greens, though, is that there's just no way they're going to form government, right? They don't even have candidates in every riding. But I hear
we do now. We do.
You do now. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So the idea is, one MPP has done a lot in terms of getting cross-party support for certain things. Changing some of the government. Yeah, Mike, he's done an incredible job in terms of getting issues raised, even if they can't be solved. If there's more, the National Post put an article out last week that the Greens have an opportunity to win some more seats, and they could hold the balance of power. But it's the way we look at it, it's the balance of responsibility. Mm-hmm. If there's a minority situation, or there's it's close, more MPs talking about the same thing, looking at every issue on its own and not being so damn hyper-partisan, the Conservatives are bad and we're all good. It's every issue has some merits, and the constructive opposition looks at things and says, okay, this is great, this is bad, here's how to fix it. And that's, I think, the only way we're going to see progress for ourselves is if we see government, the way government do things change. And the only way we're going to do that is if we elect people that are going to think that way.
This is Lara. I was just going to add that I'm not without hope about the Green Party, because I supported Mike Morris on his campaign, and he has been phenomenal for Kitchener Centre, the region that he represents, and I'm super proud of what he's done. And a big part of what is great about the Greens is that they don't necessarily have to align with everything that the party is doing. They're allowed to come up with their own opinions and ideas about things and put things forward. So it doesn't have to be only driven from the top down of their party.